So we've left this large town, and it literally loops around the bottom level of the layout and into the Helix. Your Helix is rather interesting because, let me just kind of pan back here. As you can see, it's pretty much hidden, and there's a wall piece at the top that sort of makes it disappear. It's kind of built almost into the benchwork in many ways.
The Helix is 5.5 turns top to bottom.
Yes.
The radius, the center track radius, is 27.5 inches, so that the Helix itself has an outside dimensions of 5 feet by 5 feet. There's 3.5 inches between the track at each level going up.
Yes. Now, when you built this Helix, let me just have a close look here so we can actually look at it from this side. I noticed that there's some sort of a system that you use specifically that looks fairly simple.
Correct. I was looking on the internet and I came across an example of using threaded rod to hold the various levels. Originally I thought I might have to put threaded rod on both the inside or the outside. That has proven to be unnecessary.
Right.
I had to confirm that I could get my longest cars had clearance around there. That proved not to be a significant issue, and it was very easy to put together. Once I got the first 360 degrees at a more or less steady slope, then it's simply a question of adding the threaded rod, dropping in the next layer, spacing it up at 3.5 inches, and continuing from there. It was very quick to put together, and it's been absolutely stable in operation.
It's fascinating because usually when you see these Helix, they look very ugly in the layout room because they're just this sort of open grid type stuff, and it's just amazing to me how you've hidden it here underneath your upper level. So the train just basically goes up this loop, and it must take a bit of time and adds distance to your layout.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it pops out the top in this wonderful mountain scene on a shelf, which is what, about 2 feet wide, 3 feet wide?
I mean deep?
Yeah.
Oh, it's no more than 2 feet.
So now we're on the upper level, and we're starting to, I guess the right term is head back along your layout room.
Yes.
Okay, so what do we got here as our first stop along the line?
We have a large gravel facility here.
Yeah.
We're now into the heavily resource industries.
Mm-hmm.
The gravel pit actually drops into the middle of the Helix.
Oh.
Convenient double use of space.
Yes.
And this is just a large scratch-built structure.
Where do you get your ideas? Just your imagination running wild, or?
Well, there's a glacier kit from Walthers, I think, or there's a mining kit from Walthers,
yes.
and I chose just build my own. I saw an article somewhere about how to put it together, but that's the source of concepts. Then I just started to play with it, looked at the space I had, and my desire to have a large structure in there.
Well, it is very large. It really sort of dominates nicely. And I can see there, again, you've got some hoppers that are going into the building. And
yeah.
A loader, I guess that's what you would call it, a large
Correct.
Loader. And a very nice long lead track. It gives you that sense of distance again of going to the mine or to the pit.
And one thing I cheated with here, this layout apart from the Helix is largely level. So where I had an opportunity, as I have here, I would just raise some of the background industries up a half an inch or an inch. So that's done here on the gravel facility.
Right.
And when Chris pans around, you'll see it on the mining supply facility behind us.
So what you're saying is that even though the bench work is flat and the main line is running on a flat surface, where you've installed the mine is maybe an inch or two higher.
This has been elevated.
And by having that loader elevated, you've got a grade going up there.
I've got a grade, and you get some visual separation.
Yeah. Now, what do you do to hold cars on the grade?
Well, the grade is here. This is level.
Okay, so there's just enough to keep everything from rolling.
Yes.
And now we're coming down where the mine, or I should be calling it the gravel pit actually, or pit track joins the main line. Is it gravel? Is that what it is? Or
yeah, it's a gravel quarry.
And I see there's the repeat concept of the fuel facility. It must be starting to enter another town.
Correct. This is now the town of Mount Malcolm.
Yes.
Its dominant feature is a wood treatment plant, but there are a couple of other secondary destinations here. So you looked at the quarry, there's the fuel stop here,
Yes.
there's mining supplies depot in the back,
Right.
there's the freight house in the front here and the passenger station in the back.
And then over here we have your lumber facility, I take it.
Correct. This is a wood treatment plant.
Wood treatment, okay.
It receives raw lumber, either poles or ties. And in the back structure there is a pressurized creosote plant.
Right.
So this is where the creosote is forced under pressure into the wood and then shipped out.
You didn't use a little bit of real creosote to put on the wood to give it that nice smell?
No, I don't have the, that's one sense we don't appeal to here.
No, that's probably makes a lot of sense there. And there's another one of your boxes for the yard there where you see drop off, layover, and process. So when you're dropping off cars here, then this would cover everything in the town would go in one box? Is that how you've done it?
This is for the whole town. I don't do
Okay.
industry by industry.
Okay. Well, that makes it easy because you probably, have about a dozen cars or so that are being moved at any given time up
There'd
here?
be 8 to 12, yes.
Yeah. Notice something very interesting here. There's actually dual gauge of track. There's HO and what looks like N. Is that correct?
That's correct. The creosote plants were typically served by narrow gauge railways. So what happens here is inbound traffic comes into the front of the large building on the right.
Yeah.
It's processed in that facility. It's put on top of these little log cars. The small switcher will actually push them into the creosote shed, which is the shed at the back. They'll spend several hours in there being treated with creosote and high pressure steam. The emerging product will be ties or poles that have been creosoted. They're sent out on the second track from the front, the shipping track. We have the crane here running on a private line within the mill that actually carries the finished product out of the small cars the small load cars and putting them on top of the standard gauge rail cars for delivery on southbound trains.
This crossing's kind of interesting. HO with N, is that something that you can purchase?
A friend of mine purchased it somewhere.
Yeah.
He had no point for it. He gave it to me. I adjusted the track plan in here, and it's a fascinating part of the
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And these locomotives and rolling stock, they're obviously a narrow gauge version. Are they available to purchase as well? Or?
The locomotive is an N gauge locomotive.
Yeah.
The little trailers there are all homemade.
But there's an HO shell on that. Did you make that, or is that available?
That's what it came with.
Really? So it is something that's available, a narrow gauge.
As far as I know, I bought it secondhand as you see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Painted up
Isn't that interesting? Really makes for a great looking scene. So now that we've had the pleasure of visiting this nice sort of town in the wilderness, where do we go next?
One of the long straight stretches on the railway. It's a nice vista to watch trains go along, and of course the backdrops were done by Chris. They look tremendous.
It's always nice to see trains moving through countryside. What sort of scenic technique did you use for your hills here? They're kind of interesting.
Oh, that's mostly extruded foam.
Okay, so you've cut the pieces and carved them?
Yeah, some sculptamode plopped in here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then where you've got features in the backdrop, I've built in the foreground the links to the layout.
So
the
you're
roads
building
there
your roads.
connect in.
Wonderful. Yeah, so it looks like there's some dimension here, and we're looking at about a foot wide, eh?
Yep.
And we're now looking at another town we're coming into. What's this one called?
This is Carroll Creek, and this fundamentally is a big lumber operation. There's a small store at the far end, and there's a place for fuel to be dropped off, but it's dominated by this lumber plant. the lumber plant.
Carroll Creek, that sounds like a familiar name.
Many of the towns and locations are named after family members.
Ah, there you go. Wow, it's another huge industry. It's wonderful. I really like the way you've used selective cutting of buildings against the backdrop. It provides double the size of the industries and lengths of the track. Is that from a kit or just bits and pieces that you picked up?
Oh, that's the Walther's lumber kit.
Oh, it is. Okay.
You've seen it at Michelle's layout, but I just cut it in half. It comes in half.
Yeah.
I put it together this way.
Then you don't have to glue the two halves together.
No. I scratch built that.
Yeah.
That's from a kit. It's a mix.
We have Sully's General Supplies. Is this where the people come to look for aliens from outer space?
Nope. Sully was my wife's mother's surname.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Again, a family connection.
Oh, that's great. Let me just pan back here along here. This is just tremendous. I'm going to get up a little higher, see if I can capture the essence of the operation here. This is a lot of rolling stock within a very confined space. It must be very interesting to come in here with a train and switch out all the types of cars that you've got in this facility.
It can be quite interesting, and this facility is visited twice in a session. Again, just to handle the volume of shipping that has to be dealt with, to get the full cars out of the way so empties can get in there.
And that's really reflected in what we're seeing here in the boxes for the car cards.
Yeah.
So we're in that back room, which is roughly how many you said about 14, 16 feet by...
Well, the whole layout's 24, but this is 11 feet wide by, and this peninsula over there is 8, to the other side is 8 feet.
Okay, so the tracks are basically winding around 180 degrees here, I take it.
They're turning 180 degrees, it's a tighter radius.
Mm-hmm. And you've put a wall up in the middle. And that generates, again, twice the distance in terms of your operation, because you're not seeing through to the other side.
Correct. It also supports the upper level.
Yes. So now we're really getting into the sticks.
Correct.
So we've turned 180 degrees. We're in another section of that upper level. Where are we located now?
We're now north of civilization.
Mm-hmm.
What we have right here is the junction between the track that goes up to the north end of the layout.
Right, right.
And what I'm calling the northeast branch.
Okay.
And what you've got in the northeast branch are two resource industries. There's a logging facility to the right that actually generates three kinds of traffic. There's supplies and other equipment coming in. There are logs being delivered to the facility by rail, and there's completed lumber being shipped out at the end of the processing steps. This other part of the branch now loops around another 180 degrees. It also climbs to give us a bit of a view block to the rail that's running behind it.
Mm-hmm. So in behind here,
that leads you into the north end staging.
Ah, okay. So that junction that we saw back there, then you've got all this hidden down behind your scenery. Correct. And it goes back to the staging.
Yeah. In fact, it's only partially hidden. It'll be an interesting vista when we actually pull the train past it.
And in the front here, we have your branch going up to some more industry.
This is a high-value gold mine. Its existence here was one of the rationales for originally constructing the railway.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the railway was in place, other industries took advantage of its presence. So it doesn't ship large volumes of ore, but it ships high-value ore.
Okay. And there's the supply and bunkhouse, and again some more fuel oil by the look of it
Yep.
at the end of the line. Very simple trackage.
Yep.
Nothing too complex here. However, it looks like you have to push the cars up here.
Correct. You have to be properly blocked to get up here.
Yeah. So and then pull the cars back down
Yes.
to this junction point. So is there any reversing capability at this level?
No.
So
There's no run around here.
So where do you have to set up to come to the mine then?
You set up to them. You come to the mine when you come out of north staging, the upper level staging.
Okay, so the trains come down from the north and then are pushed back, and then when it's done,
This
it
train
continues down the line.
It goes as far as Carroll Creek.
Yes.
It drops off any southbound cars it has.
Yeah.
It switches only the box cars out of the shipping component of Carroll Creek.
Mm-hmm.
It picks up any northbound cars that are waiting for it there, and pulls them all back to the north end, because even if they're going to the northeast branch, it's on the wrong side of them. It'll deliver those tomorrow.
And because of the high value gold, you're looking at only a few cars on this side.
Only a couple of cars per day.
Excellent. And that's a tour of the layout, I take it.
It is indeed.
So now I guess our next step is to run a train and see how it flows through the layout so people understand the concepts.
We can run a train.
Perfect.